Good afternoon to you both. I know, just certainly when I, look through my trusty copy, Rachel, of the New Statesman, I know Marc Francois is always a person you defer to for counsel on these matters. What do you make of his last comments?
I think it's quite key that he has advised Rishi Sunak to pull this bill rather than simply suggesting that it needs amendments. In fact, the language of the ERG's star chamber, as they call their legal experts, was really quite strong, that it would need significant amendments in order to deal with the concerns that they have. That is a kind of direct call for Conservative MPs on the right to vote against this in second reading, suggesting that they don't think it can be amended further down the line. Although I would say that that is not the mood of all Conservative MPs, even those on the right who would like this bill to be tougher. Some of them will be considering whether they should vote it through now and try and amend it later on. But very strong words from the ERG, which I suppose is what we expected.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ERG members, but there are more new Conservatives, I suppose, the traditionalists, right?
Well, the right wing of the Tory party isn't one faction. Yeah. There are, depending on how you count them, 3, 4, 5 distinct groups.
I think there were five. I think there were 5 groups at this meeting.
5 groups. Yes, and they don't all vote as one block, so they'll be considering their options. Some of them will be voting against, some of them will be abstaining, some of them will hope that they can put extra pressure on Rishi Sunak in the new year if this passes its first reading. But all of them will also be aware that there is significant pressure coming from the moderates in the party as well, and they influence the Prime Minister's decisions too.
Charlie, you know what it's like on the inside when you've been a government advisor. These kind of things are headaches, and often they're sorted with a matter of days. There's a bit of a blip. You placate the odd backbencher. You send in the chief whip to have a nice quiet word, and everything goes away, and it's all sorted. But this is genuine rebellion territory, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Ian. And you can only hope sometimes when the chief whip goes in that there'll be a resolution to whatever the problem, whatever the conflict there is that particular MP has. But on this particular occasion, it does feel more along the lines of 2017, when Theresa May was trying to get through a Brexit deal, where you had factions of the Conservative Party, a number of them back then also, that retreated into their own silos and were unable to compromise, or were unable to, dare I say it, see the bigger picture about all of this, which is effectively, if the Conservative Party is divided and continues to be divided over this particular policy area, these emergency proposals of the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, who have had, I doubt, dare to say, countless amounts of legal advice attached to them, if the Conservative Party is going to tear itself up over this particular issue, then it just hands over even more polling points to the opposition. So I think what the Prime Minister really does need to do is to make sure that he can respond once he's finished with the COVID inquiry today to the press conference or the statement that Bill Cash and the ERG wish to put out, but making it absolutely clear that they'll continue to talk, they'll continue to welcome the views of all sides of the Conservative Party, but the proposals that are on the table continue to go as far as they possibly can. They are far further than any proposals that have been brought forward previously. And it ultimately, whatever the legal advice is, it will be for ministers to decide ultimately about particular deportations. That's just one aspect of the bill, but that's something that everybody should be able to get behind.
Yeah. And Rachel, it's not all bad news for Rishi Sunak. There are some, what you'd call people, certainly on the right of the party. I'm thinking Priti Patel and Jacob Rees-Mogg and Lee Anderson and those kind of names, who have already said that they will support the government on this. So they may, the loyalist card has not died, it seems, in the Tory party.
Yes, and I think there is a danger when we talk about the right of the party of grouping them all together and assuming that everyone who has a strong view on Brexit or immigration speaks with one voice. The Prime Minister also worked very hard last week to point out why this bill couldn't go further without it all falling apart due to, among other things, the Rwandan government. Charlie is absolutely right that this has the potential to give more leverage to Keir Starmer and Labour, which no one in the Conservative Party want. I would suggest that the majority of MPs, the vast majority of MPs, don't want another leadership challenge right now. They don't want a snap general election. They don't want the Prime Minister to look any weaker than he already does. They know that's not in their own best interests. So the question is, can they swallow their pride and get behind this in order to save him on what has become a crucial bill of his premiership? Or is the infighting going to just prove too much and take over and topple him almost by accident?
What do you think would suit Keir Starmer most on this? Because there is an argument that says, well, look, if they get it sorted and voted through and it becomes law and everything's up and running, regardless of how successful it might be, whatever the manifestation of the policy, it's done and dusted. If this drags on and the can is constantly kicked down the road, then there's a very real chance that Mr. Starmer will inherit lock, stock and barrel the entirety of this hassle and jib.
Well, yes, but in that situation, Keir Starmer would be Prime Minister, which I think is his primary aim at the moment. I think he's got his eye on the election, and I think we'll deal with any issues that cross his desk as Prime Minister at that point. And the Conservative Party has to be really, really careful about this, that this particular fight, having this fight in public, doesn't just hand the greater election victory to Labour than the polls are already suggesting.
What do your editorials at the New Statesman tell him to do? To ditch it? To not support it, I would guess?
Our editorials at the New Statesman do not tell anyone what to do. We are merely observing the current trends, and I should say that we interview a number of Conservative politicians, including those on the right, and you should check out our issue in January if you'd like to read more about what the right of the Conservative Party is saying.
There it is. Look forward to it. And Charlie, just a final point on this. What's your gut on this? That despite all the mood music says disaster for Rishi Sunak, it's going to fall apart, and when you've got Mark Francois and Bill Cash and these kind of characters sort of chomping at the bit. You've got Theresa May supporting the government, which is enough for people like Mark Francois to discombobulate in real time. So all of these different elements are going on. When push comes to shove, what do you think's going to happen, Charlie?
Well, first of all, I'll be straight out the traps getting my copy of the New Statesman there from Rachel, so great plug.
You might be in it, Charlie.
I think, look, I think what hopefully will happen, and what tends to happen, is that when it comes to an election, the Conservative Party just has a tradition of uniting and getting behind the leader when it's very, very difficult circumstances. I know Brexit was probably an anomaly to that, because that has dogged the country, the Conservative Party for such a long period of time that people didn't feel that they could make compromises. But I do feel that when the choice is clear between a Conservative government, or the potential of a Conservative government carrying on, delivering for the British people everything that every Conservative wants to see happen, versus the alternative of a Conservative Party that is tearing itself apart over this particular issue and handing over the keys of number 10 to Sir Keir Starmer and Labour, I think that should be enough, you would hope, for the Conservative Party to come together and to realise that those MPs that have, yes, particular policy issues, whether it's on immigration or whether it's on levelling up or whether it's on healthcare or whatever it is, or if you want more tax cuts sooner or whatever it is, everybody has to hold their nerve. Sometimes you have to hold your tongue and have these debates, not in public, but behind closed doors, and make sure that the Conservative Party is putting forward as best manifesto as it possibly can, with all of the successes that it has today. And there are a number of successes when it comes to immigration. We saw all of that in the letter exchange between Rob Jenrick and the Prime Minister. Small boat crossings down by a third. There's a lot of achievements out there. The Conservative Party needs to come together, articulate those achievements, and be united. And that's the only way that it'll have a fighting chance of winning the next general election.
There it is, Charlie. Thank you. Rachel Cunliffe and Charlie Rowley with us here on TalkTV.